My name is Sandra R. Curtis. I am 34 years old and I work full-time as a mechanical engineering technician while finishing the last year of my bachelor's degree at night. I live in a mid-sized city in the Midwest where most of my days are structured around work, classes, and the gym. I am not flashy. I keep a steady routine and I usually think before I react. My husband Lucas is 31. We have been married for 5 years and together for almost 8. We rent a townhouse together on the edge of downtown. Both of our names are on the lease. We split rent. Although I cover most of the utilities and insurance because I earn more, he works in marketing for a local lifestyle brand and has a much more social schedule than I do. Until about 3 months ago, I thought our biggest issue was that we were growing in different directions. He wanted more travel, more dinners out, more experiences. I wanted to finish school, increase my income, and then expand our options from a stable foundation. I believe that was temporary tension, not a structural problem. The shift happened on a Tuesday night. I had just gotten home from campus around 9 p.m., and he was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, still in his work clothes but clearly waiting for me. His expression was already defensive before I even put my bag down. He said he had met someone else, not physically cheated, according to him, but emotionally connected. He said he felt seen. He said he felt alive. He said he needed space to figure out what he wanted because our life felt predictable and small. The way he delivered it was almost irritated, like my stability was an inconvenience. I did not raise my voice. I asked how long this had been developing. He rolled his eyes and said it did not matter because nothing had technically happened. Then he added that I had been distant anyway, buried in textbooks and spreadsheets. I told him I hoped the other woman gave him the peace he was looking for. He blinked at me like that was not the reaction he expected. That was the moment something in me went quiet. Not angry, not heartbroken in a dramatic way, just clear. For context, this was not a sudden personality change. Lucas had been different for a while, more guarded with his phone, more critical of my schedule. Small comments that sounded harmless, but carried an edge. You never have time for anything spontaneous anymore. You are always tired. You used to be more fun. I did not dismiss those comments. I explained my timeline clearly. I had 2 semesters left. Once I finished, my income would increase significantly. The grind was temporary. I asked him directly if he felt neglected. He said no at the time, said he understood, said he was proud of me. So when he sat there that Tuesday and told me he had met someone who made him feel alive, it was not just about attraction. It was about comparison. And he made that clear. She is ambitious in a different way. He said she actually enjoys life. He said she does not treat every year like a waiting room. That was the tone. Not remorse, not confusion, almost justification. I asked the obvious question. Do you want a divorce? He exhaled loudly like I was being dramatic. He said, I need space. Why do you always jump to extremes? He said this is why he cannot talk to me, that everything has to be logical and final. I told him I was not jumping. I was clarifying. Space inside a marriage usually means one of 2 things, repair or exit. I wanted to know which direction he was leaning. He stood up and said he did not know yet, that he needed time to explore his feelings, that I should be mature enough to give him that without turning it into a legal threat. Explore his feelings. That was the phrase. I asked if he planned to continue seeing her while he explored. He hesitated for half a second. That half second was enough. He said he did not want to feel controlled. He said if I trusted him, I would let him figure it out without interrogating him. That was the moment I realized this was not confusion. It was a branch swing. He wanted the security of our lease, our shared bills, my consistency, while he tested whether this new woman offered something better. I did not argue. I did not beg. I simply said I would not participate in that arrangement. He called me cold. He said this was exactly why he felt disconnected, that I shut down instead of fighting for him. What he meant was I was not competing. After that conversation, I did not negotiate. I did not suggest counseling. I did not propose a cooling-off period. I went to bed in the guest room, set my alarm for 6 a.m., and started acting the next day. While he was at work, I called in sick to my job for the first time in 2 years. Then I opened my laptop and searched for short-term rentals near campus. By noon, I had scheduled 2 viewings. By 4 p.m., I signed a 6-month lease on a 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. It was not glamorous. 3rd floor walk-up, basic appliances, neutral walls, but it was clean, available immediately, and within my budget without strings. I paid the deposit on the spot. On the drive back to the townhouse, I called a moving company and booked them for the following morning. Not a full-service crew, just 2 guys in a truck for 3 hours. Enough to move my desk, my clothes, my books, and the few pieces of furniture I had purchased myself before we got married. When Lucas got home that evening, I was sitting at the dining table with a folder. He dropped his bag and immediately noticed something was different. My tone, probably. "What did you do?" he asked. I told him I signed a lease. I said I was moving out tomorrow morning. He stared at me like I had spoken in another language. "You are not serious." I told him I was. I explained the lease terms. I told him I would continue paying my half of the current rent until the lease here expired, or until he found a roommate to replace my portion. I said I would not leave him financially exposed. He laughed, but it was sharp. He said, "This is insane." I said, "I need space, not abandonment." I answered evenly. Space from a marriage does not look like dates with another woman while your wife waits in the next room. His face hardened. "You are being dramatic and insecure." "No," I said. "I am being decisive." He started pacing, asking where I would go, asking how I could make such a huge decision in less than 24 hours. I told him it was not less than 24 hours. It was the moment he said he needed to explore another connection while keeping this one intact. I was not going to compete for my own husband. The next morning at 9 a.m., the movers arrived. They were efficient. 2 guys in their 20s who did not ask questions. They wrapped my desk, stacked my boxes of textbooks, and carried out the mattress I had bought before we got married. Lucas stood in the kitchen the entire time, arms folded, watching like this was some kind of performance. "You are really going through with this," he said when they carried out the last box. "Yes." He tried a different tone then, softer. He said, "I do not have to prove a point. We could talk about this like adults." I told him I had talked the night before. I had listened. I had asked clear questions. His answer was that he needed freedom to explore while keeping the marriage structurally intact. I was not interested in being structural support for my own replacement. He accused me of twisting his words, said he never said replacement. I reminded him that emotional exclusivity is part of marriage. If that is removed, the contract changes whether paperwork does or not. He scoffed at the word contract. He said I always reduce everything to systems and logic, that love is messy and complicated and requires patience. I told him patience applies to problems inside the marriage, not additions outside of it. By noon, the townhouse looked different. My desk was gone. My clothes were gone. The bookshelf I had built with my dad years ago was gone. The space felt lighter. Not emotionally, logistically. Before I left, I walked him through the financial breakdown. I would continue paying half the rent until the lease ended in 4 months. Utilities would remain split. I emailed him the updated spreadsheet showing the automatic transfers. He looked offended that I had prepared documentation. He said I already had this planned. "No," I said, "I am just organized." When I picked up my car keys, he finally asked the question that mattered. "So what is this, a trial separation?" "No." "Then what?" I paused, not for effect, but for precision. "This is me removing myself from a situation where I am being treated as an option." He stared at me like he was waiting for anger, for a speech, for some emotional eruption that would validate his narrative that I was cold and extreme. Instead, I wished him well. I said, "I hope she gives you the peace you were looking for." Then I walked out. That night, in my new apartment, surrounded by unopened boxes, I did not text him. I did not check his social media. I did not call mutual friends. I opened my laptop and finished a lab report that was due at midnight, because if my life was going to change, it was going to move forward, not sideways. The first week in the new apartment was quiet, not dramatic, not cinematic, just structured. I set up my desk the first night. Internet installed the next morning. By day 3, the place looked intentional instead of temporary. I kept my routine exactly the same. Work, gym, classes, study. Lucas texted on day 2. "This feels extreme. We could have handled this differently." I responded once. "We did handle it. This is the result." He did not reply for several hours. Then he sent a longer message. He said he never meant for me to leave. He said he thought I would fight harder. That my willingness to walk away proved I did not value him enough. That part was interesting. I told him fighting for someone and competing with someone are not the same thing. I do the first. I do not do the second. Over the next week, his messages shifted tone. First frustration, then defensiveness, then subtle blame. "You always choose work over us. You made me feel lonely. If you had been more present, none of this would have happened." I did not argue point by point. I responded once more and kept it contained. If you felt lonely, you could have addressed that directly. Introducing a third person was your choice. I responded to that choice. After that, I limited communication strictly to logistics, lease payments, mail forwarding, utilities. The rest of his messages I left unanswered. Not to punish him, but to prevent the conversation from turning into a cycle where he could keep testing how available I was. A mutual friend texted me around the second weekend, asked if everything was okay. Apparently, Lucas had told people we were taking space because I was overwhelmed with school. He framed it like my stress had created a temporary separation, like this was a mental health break, not a boundary response. I did not correct the narrative publicly. I simply said, "We are handling it privately." By week 3, something else happened. The emotional text slowed. Not completely, but the accusations stopped for a few days, and that silence felt like recalculation. Then I heard through someone else that Lucas had been posting more nights out. Wine bars, group dinners, subtle photos with a woman whose face was always half cropped out. I did not check for myself. I did not need confirmation. The point had never been catching him. The point had been refusing to participate in a marriage where my role could be kept stable while his curiosity ran loose. Meanwhile, I increased my study hours. I applied for 2 internship opportunities connected to my degree. I updated my resume. I scheduled meetings with professors about graduate programs in other cities. The quiet did something unexpected. It sharpened my focus. I was not reacting to him anymore. I was building. About a month after I moved out, Lucas called instead of texting. I let it ring once before answering. His voice sounded different, less sharp, more measured. He asked if we could meet and talk in person. Not about the lease, about us. When he asked to meet, I did not agree immediately. I asked what the purpose was. He said he wanted clarity, that things felt unresolved, that the distance had made him realize he might have overreacted. Might have. I told him clarity does not require a coffee shop. There was a pause. Then he said he had stopped seeing her, that it had not turned into what he thought it would, that she was exciting but inconsistent, that she did not show up the way he expected. I listened without interrupting. Then he said something that confirmed my decision had been correct. I did not think you would actually leave. That was the core of it. He thought I would posture, argue, compete, stay. He thought my stability meant I would tolerate discomfort indefinitely, that I would keep paying bills and sharing a lease while he explored feelings like they were a hobby. I told him I did not leave to manipulate him. I left because the structure had already shifted. He asked if there was a path back. I answered honestly. There might have been before he tested the alternative while still married to me. After that, trust changes shape. He tried one more angle. He said marriage is not about perfection, that people make mistakes, that we owed it to 5 years to try. I told him I respect effort inside commitment. I do not respect effort after exit strategies have been explored. He grew frustrated again, accused me of acting superior, of pretending I was above normal human emotions. I told him this was not about superiority, it was about standards. The conversation circled for 20 minutes. Same points, same attempts to reposition what he had done as confusion instead of choice. Finally, I ended it cleanly. I am filing for divorce next week. You will receive the paperwork through an attorney. I will continue honoring the lease terms as agreed until it expires. After that, our financial ties end. He went quiet. Then his voice shifted from defensive to sharp. So that is it. You just erase me. I answered carefully. No, you stepped out. I stepped forward. He said I would regret being this rigid. I told him maybe. But I will not regret protecting my self-respect. When I hung up, I sat there for a full minute. Then I blocked his number. Not out of anger. Out of completion. I also unfollowed and removed him from every social platform. Not because I needed silence from the world, because I needed no open doors. That evening, he called from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, angry. You really did this over one mistake. I did not respond. I blocked that number too. What happened next was predictable, but still instructive. He started reaching out through mutual friends. Apparently, he had not told people the full story. The version circulating was that I had become emotionally unavailable because of school, moved out impulsively, and blindsided him with divorce papers. One friend asked directly if there had been someone else. I answered calmly. He told me he needed space to explore another connection. I removed myself from the equation. That is the timeline. I did not embellish, I did not campaign. The next morning, I contacted an attorney recommended by a colleague. Consultation scheduled for Friday. There is a difference between reacting emotionally and making a decision once. I had made mine. Filing was procedural. No drama, no dramatic courthouse scene, just paperwork and a calendar, and my life moving forward without him in the driver's seat. I met with the attorney that Friday afternoon. I brought documentation, lease agreement, bank statements, screenshots of our financial transfers. There was no need to prove infidelity because we live in a no-fault state. That simplified things. We had no kids, no joint property, just shared furniture and a lease with 4 months remaining. The attorney asked if I was certain. I said yes, not emotionally certain, structurally certain. The paperwork was drafted within a week. Lucas received it through certified mail. He called from another unknown number that evening. I let it go to voicemail. His message was shorter this time, less angry, more incredulous. You really filed? Yes, I really filed. He tried another route the following week. An email. Long, reflective. He wrote that he had made a mistake, that the other woman had disappeared once things became complicated, that she liked the excitement but not the consequences. He said he missed me. Then he corrected himself and wrote that he missed stability. That phrase stood out. Missed stability. I replied once, I hope you find what you are actually looking for. Then I archived the thread. Meanwhile, something else shifted in my life. Around month 2, I received a call from one of the companies I had applied to. A paid internship tied directly to my degree, in a larger city 3 hours away. The role would transition into full-time once I graduated. The salary was higher than what I was currently making, even before finishing school. I accepted within 48 hours. Not to prove a point, not to outrun him, because the opportunity aligned with the direction I was already moving. At the end of the semester, I notified the leasing office that I would not be renewing under any circumstances. I continued paying my portion through the final month as agreed. Every transfer was documented. Every utility split was honored. Lucas tried one last reach out through a mutual friend. Apparently, he said I was being transactional about something that had once been emotional. The friend asked if there was any chance of reconciliation now that the other woman was gone. I answered calmly. The presence or absence of a third person does not undo the fact that he chose to introduce one. There is a difference between regret and revision. Regret feels heavy and accountable. Revision sounds like this never would have happened if you had reacted differently. He also told someone, apparently, that he did not expect me to go this far, that he thought I would cool off, that I would come back once the tension settled. That sentence confirmed something important. He thought my absence was emotional, temporary, a storm. He did not realize it was structural. By the time the lease on the townhouse ended, I had already secured my new apartment in the larger city. Simple, clean, close to work. I transferred my final rent payment as agreed and sent confirmation to the leasing office. Closed that chapter cleanly. There was no final meeting to exchange belongings. Anything that mattered to me had already been moved the morning after I signed the new lease months earlier. Anything left behind was replaceable. The divorce finalized 6 months after he said he needed space. I did not attend the hearing in person. My attorney handled it. When the confirmation email came through, I read it once and archived it. No ceremony, no ritual, just a legal end to something that had already ended the moment he asked for freedom inside the marriage. The internship transitioned into full-time earlier than expected. My salary increased significantly. I signed a 12-month lease in the new city and upgraded slightly. Still simple, still intentional. And here is the part that matters. I never reached out, not to check if he regretted it, not to confirm if the other woman stayed or left, not to prove anything. My quiet absence was not a tactic. It was a boundary maintained consistently. People assume closure requires conversation. Sometimes closure is the door closing and never reopening. About 9 months after I moved, I ran into someone from our old circle at a conference tied to my industry. Different city, different context, same familiar face. He looked surprised to see me, asked how I was doing. I told him the truth. Good, busy, settled. There was an awkward pause before he mentioned Lucas. Apparently, Lucas had moved out of the townhouse shortly after the lease ended. Took a smaller place closer to downtown. The woman he had been seeing did not last more than a few months. According to him, she was great at attention, not great at consistency. None of that surprised me. What did stand out was something else he said. He thought you would come back once you cooled off. That narrative again. That my decisiveness was temporary. That my absence was emotional, not structural. He also mentioned Lucas had started dating again quickly. A couple of short relationships. Nothing stable. I did not feel satisfaction hearing that. Just confirmation. When someone is chasing the feeling of being seen instead of building something durable, they often confuse novelty with depth. After the conference, I walked back to my hotel and thought about the timeline. One sentence at the kitchen island. One decision the next morning. One lease signed within 24 hours. There was no revenge, no public argument, no dramatic social media statement, just movement. In the year since that Tuesday night, I had finished my degree, secured a better job, relocated to a stronger market, increased my income, expanded my professional network, built a new routine. I did not do those things to prove a point to him. I did them because once the distraction was removed, the path was clear. I dated casually for a while. Slowly. Intentionally. No rush to replace. No rush to declare anything permanent. One thing changed permanently, though. If someone tells me they need space to evaluate alternatives, I no longer negotiate. Space is not a threat. It is a decision, and I respond to decisions with action. It has been just over a year now. The divorce is finalized. The lease is long expired. The townhouse is someone else's address. His number has remained blocked the entire time. There was no final apology, no dramatic attempt to win me back, no public fallout, just silence. And that silence did something I do not think he anticipated. It forced him to sit with the reality that I did not react emotionally. I recalibrated structurally. A few months ago, I heard through that same mutual contact that he mentioned me in conversation. Not angrily, not bitterly, just puzzled. He said he never saw it coming. That part makes sense. From his perspective, I was predictable, stable, routine-driven, the kind of woman who would tolerate discomfort for the sake of long-term plans. What he misread was the difference between patience and passivity. I am patient with growth. I am not passive with disrespect. When he said he needed space to explore another connection, he assumed I would argue, compete, negotiate, stay nearby as a backup. Instead, I removed myself the next day, finished my degree, relocated, built a new life without commentary. No revenge posts, no cryptic updates, no public spiral, just absence, the quiet kind. And here is the part I would tell anyone reading this. You do not need to destroy someone to protect yourself. You do not need to scream to make a point. Sometimes the most definitive response is simple alignment. He wanted space. I gave it fully. He wanted to feel alive. I chose to feel steady. And when the paperwork was signed and my life continued forward without interruption, that became the closure he never saw coming. Not because I punished him, because I left cleanly.